So you haven't posted in a while, haven't posted an episode of your podcast, haven't posted on social media, have been absent, have been missing. And this is me. And in this episode, I'm going to talk about why I've done that, what happened, and what I'm going to do about it, and what you can do about it yourself to get yourself back in to the game, back into producing episodes and make it work for you when clearly it hasn't been. So I haven't posted a podcast episode in a couple of months, I think, and been very quiet on social media, the odd little thing here and there. But it's been an incredibly busy time of year. Summer's always busy for everyone, I think, and that could be my main kind of reason, my main excuse as to why I haven't been posting episodes. But the time I've had away from posting is a time where I've been considering why I haven't posted, and I've kind of pulled it apart. And it's not just the business, because I'm always busy. I have been especially busy, but you can always find time. You can prioritize it over other things. And this leads back to when I went to the podcast show in May, the London podcast show. And I came back from the podcast show inspired. I'd listened to so many amazing talks about podcasting, and gave me so many ideas on how to be a better podcaster, how to show my clients how to do their podcast better. And I passed on that wisdom and knowledge that I'd learned. But for myself, despite coming back thinking, right, I've got all these things I can now implement and improve what I'm doing, it almost had the reverse effect where I kind of knew too much. I was now looking at my podcast thinking, I know what I need to do to make it amazing, and it requires an incredible amount of work and change and thought that I'm now thinking I need to spend so much more time on my podcast, where I've been spending years nailing it down to a precise workflow that I can do in the small amount of time I've got. So all of a sudden I was faced with all these new things I'm bringing into the fold, and it just kind of set me back. And it also kind of weirdly, because I came back kind of feeling pumped, and then when I started thinking about it more, it kind of knocked my confidence, because I started feeling my podcast isn't good enough, because I'd seen what all these amazing podcasters are doing with their huge shows, and I was lacking in areas that to be where they are. So it kind of knocked my confidence that my podcast isn't good enough, and there's no point me continuing doing episodes unless I can make it good enough. And then I've just ended up doing no episodes because of that. So it's not really helped me go forward at all, this extra knowledge. So I've started trying to figure out where I am and what I need to do to change this. And it's led me back to thinking I give other people advice, but it's quite hard to give yourself advice sometimes, and a lot of the time, and kind of stand back and look at yourself from the outside in. And working as a kind of solo entrepreneur, you don't get those conversations with people, the back and forth about what you're doing yourself, and the kind of help and criticism that you need to see what you're doing, rather than like when I look at other people's podcasts. It's very easy for me to see the points that are lacking and where it needs to improve, but it's hard to see that on my own work, because you're kind of so deep in it. To take a step back and look in is quite hard, and it's hard for all podcasters, which is why having help from someone and them taking a look at your work is so invaluable and so useful to help you improve and help you move forward. So for me, working on my own, it takes a lot of effort to step back and then look at it from a distance. So the main advice I often give people is to ask yourself, what is the goal of your podcast and what you're doing? Why are you doing it? What are you doing it for? And I'd kind of lost sight of that for myself. And for both of because I do multiple podcasts, for both of them, I was lost on that aspect for both. So my football podcast, when I started the podcast, I had a sponsor, and the sponsor was for an event that was upcoming. So for the first few months of the podcast, I was talking about this event who'd sponsored me to talk about. So when the event had then come and passed, I'd lost a kind of impetus of the show. And because I had that sponsor at the beginning and it gave me the reason to start the show, once that event had passed and now the sponsor wasn't there, I didn't know why I was doing it anymore. So I ended up not recording episodes, because if you don't have that drive as to the end goal, then what is the point apart from just doing it for the sake of it or doing it for fun? To help people get where they need to get with their podcast, I put something together which is the checklist I use when I've got a client and I'm auditing their podcast to see where they need to be. I put that checklist together for you to use. It's a 12-point checklist that you can pretty much audit your own podcast for free using the same method I charge people to audit their podcast. So if you want that checklist, hit the link in the description and you can get that for yourself for absolutely nothing as my gift to you. So when you have limited time available and resources to put effort into something that you don't really know why and what you're getting out of it is extremely difficult to kind of carry on doing. And I had a similar thing for this podcast. Is I'm doing it to try and use it for content as part of my kind of content flywheel, as well as directing people towards it to gain trust and to get people to know me better, to then potentially work with me in the future. And I'd probably lost track of that sole goal by knowing too much about podcasts and trying to do things I know works for certain podcasts, whereas it's not necessarily important for me and my podcast. So when I record podcasts, I just make a few notes and try and chat. I don't like to have it scripted. So I'm just going to refer to my notes. So the big thing I came back from the podcast show was about formats. And it's something that cropped up in many of the talks, whether it was the basis of the talk or not, was having a format for your show. And it's something that makes a podcast memorable. It makes it shareable. If you can say what the podcast is about and who it's for in one sentence, then you can tell a friend about it. You can share a post on social media about it. You can remember it yourself when you've been told about it. And it's having that thing, like, what is it? What is it about? And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be really, really niche and kind of narrowed down to something that's not a broad subject. It's just having something unique about your particular show. And it made me think about one of my favorite podcasts, and that's Strangers on a Bench. And in theory, it is just a podcast where two people have a chat about nothing in particular, about their lives. It's a guy who interviews people, and the chat is just, there's no particular subject going into the chat. It's about them. And so many people create podcasts where they just go, oh, I'm just going to have interesting conversations with people that go nowhere, that don't work, because there's hundreds, thousands of them that are just conversations. But the thing that made it unique and shareable, repeatable, is the strangers on a bench thing. So he basically sits on a bench in a park and has a conversation with a stranger. And the beginning of the podcast is always a clip of him saying, weird question, I do a podcast called Strangers on a Bench where I have conversations with strangers on a bench. Would you like to have a conversation with me? And it's that simplicity of it, where it's just people are walking past and he approaches them, say, would you like a conversation? That initial concept is what is so simple and so easy to repeat and easy to remember that makes it. And then he has probably 2 or 3 very basic format points during the show. So his first question is always, what's your favorite day of the week? And his last question is always, what are you going to do next? Or what are you going to do now? And that's pretty much it. And the rest of the conversation, he's a very good interviewer, and he brings out things of people during it. And the conversations are often fascinating. Oh, and also the other format point is it's anonymous. So you don't know their name. He doesn't ask them what they do for a living, which makes the conversation more interesting because you're then learning about the person and not just about what they do. It's not a conversation where someone comes on and just tells you their career path and how they did this, that, and the other. And you don't have that judgment on someone because you don't know what they look like. It's audio only. You don't know what they look like. You don't know what they do for a living. So you don't judge a person based on how successful they are or what they look like and anything like that. So it kind of makes the podcast really unique in that respect, even though it is just a conversation between two people. So that uniqueness of it and the way he has that format points immediately made me think about that when people kept talking about formats at the podcast show. And then that's when I started talking about my podcast and like, oh, what is the format of my podcast? What makes it unique? What makes it different to other podcasts about podcasting? What am I doing? And then it led me down to try and change it. Do I have to do this? Do I need to do more editing? Do I need to do less editing? What do I need to do? What's it for? What's the goal? And I've been working with a lady called Kelly, who's in a kind of similar boat where she has a podcast and she doesn't know where to take it. She's written a book. She does a radio show and she has a podcast on it. And I've been working with her to try and help her get more direction with it, have a goal and work on what the podcast actually is, because it's lots of conversations with lots of different types of people. It's not one specific thing. And the uniqueness of it is her and the way she talks to them and how she goes really deep into what their kind of thoughts are, and she really lets them open up within their conversation. And her book is called Can You Hear Me? And it's about and it's exactly that. It's about people who are struggling to be heard. So her conversations is letting those people be heard and how the listener could kind of relate to that. and how they can get themselves heard and get their own voice heard, because they may be struggling with that. So it's kind of finding a way to package that that will be memorable, that will be shareable. And we've been trying to gradually narrow it down and come up with these ideas. And I've used that Strangers on a Bench example with her, where there's a lot of conversations about different things that are all very cleverly and simply packaged together to make it work. So who am I doing it for? And what am I doing it for? Who am I doing this for? So this is, and people like Kelly, this is the type of person I am doing it for. And it's people who need that help to find their direction with their podcast, to find what they're doing it for and how they're doing it, and to help them with their process, with their workflows, because I've been trying to help Kelly on exactly where she goes from recording to publishing, and how to save her time doing that and make everything a lot easier, because everything I do is about me saving time and getting the best possible product out there without taking it all day to do it. And I've worked with a lot of people to help them do the same, and a lot of businesses to help that. So this podcast is for those type of people, to help them get a podcast produced well as they can, and package it together well, and using all the kind of things about podcasting I've learned over the years, and pass that on to people so that they can get their podcast out there and get their voice out and their message, and achieve the goals they're trying to achieve with their podcast. So with that said, I'm going to potentially rebrand this podcast and give it new direction, new focus. And a big thing for me is kind of making it more raw, authentic, because my whole journey within podcasting has been about me finding myself as well. So doing heavily edited episodes with fast pacey cuts and graphics and things like that is a great technique to make something watchable. But the main thing for me is to develop as a person and develop who I am and what I'm doing for other people. So I'm going to focus less on editing. I'm going to focus more on the message and what I'm saying, and just try and get as much content out there as I can by using this technique. So having a method to each episode where there is something that I'm helping people solve and relating it to an experience in my life, either myself or a client that I've done that for. And I'm doing a similar thing with my other podcast, where I was having conversations with people or solo episodes, and then really editing together to make a really nicely edited video, and adding in graphics and everything like that, and try and package together something. But I'm never going to do it so that it's better than another YouTuber or podcaster who has been paying an editor and has a lot more time than me. So it loses that uniqueness about it. So it's going to be more based on the actual content rather than the editing side of things, and just me speaking more about what I know and my experiences. And I think that in a world of AI, that type of content is becoming more valuable. Those kind of raw, authentic conversations and relating to people's lives more than just editing it together to make something as polished as possible. And I'd like to do lives as well. That's something that I've been looking at as a potential workflow technique is when you're looking at what to do with video and audio. And something I want to try is making the video part live. So I just hit record and start talking, and then I can edit the audio, because sometimes if you're just listening to this and I kind of go, oh, I'm not sure, I'm going to look at my notes, and I look to one side like I am now and go, okay, yeah, that's what I know. And then I go back to the camera. If you're watching that, it's not too bad, because you can see what I'm doing, that I've just had to refer to something. Or if I go to pick something up and stop talking and go, I'm just going to make a note of something, I'm going to demonstrate something, then that kind of works. But if you're listening to audio, it's quite off-putting. And as an editor, it's something that I can clean up very quickly, very, very easily. But if I was trying to make a more slick video, I'd have to do some transitions or cuts to make that look good. That would take a lot more time. So the idea of doing live video edited for audio is something I'm going to start trying out as well. So if you're in the same boat as me, you haven't posted in a while, this is for you. Just scrap it all, start again, start talking, and get back into the habit of doing it and make it work for you. Find out your goal. What are you doing it for? If you don't have a reason, then you won't keep going. You won't get it to achieve your goals if you don't know what those goals are. So really focus on your goals. And it's something I said to a client recently, that their goal wasn't actually to get a big audience. It's to reach a specific type of person, that they necessarily only really need to reach 5 specific people to get what they want to get. So focusing on things that increase your audience is a waste of time. It really needs to be honed in on going, how do I reach that specific person? And it's not necessarily using the same techniques and spending time and money doing things that you need to do for a different goal. So if you get really focused on your goal, what you're doing it for and why, you'll get back in the chair, you'll get back recording again, and you'll create a much better podcast for yourself and your audience. To help people get where they need to get with their podcast, I put something together which is the checklist I use when I've got a client and I'm auditing their podcast to see where they need to be. I put that checklist together for you to use. It's a 12-point checklist that you can pretty much audit your own podcast for free using the same method I charge people to audit their podcast. So if you want that checklist, hit the link in the description and you can get that for yourself for absolutely nothing as my gift to you. So thanks for listening, and I will be back soon with another episode, and you can hold me to that.